So the goal for today is basically understanding why biologists would want to classify living things. How was this system actually developed, and what system are we going to use to actually classify and organize things during this semester? So a little bit of background on what classification is. The branch of biology that includes classifying living things is called taxonomy. So this is, again, a systematic way. So we have to have a system that we can use to classify living things. And this was developed by a gentleman named Carolus Linnaeus back in the 1760s, and he developed this two-naming system for every living things. For instance, we are all considered Homo sapiens. That's our two-part name, and so all living things have a two-part name based upon their genus and their species. So originally, when life was looked at and studied, since we didn't have the tools necessary to understand some of the complexities of life and how life was organized, we basically said all life was either in the plant category or the animal category. So originally these were called the two kingdoms, plant kingdom and animal kingdom. But since technology advanced and we started developing different tools to study life, we were able to actually use a five kingdom system that we use today. But we can take all life forms and put them into what are called domains. So more recently, scientists have used a domain system based upon DNA evidence to basically categorize living things into the bacteria domain, the archaea domain, or the eukarya domain. And this really is derived from the type of cells that make up these living species, and this system developed probably right around the year 2000, where scientists started looking at DNA much closer and realized that there were some significant differences between the different types of bacteria, so they categorized them into two separate domains for each one, and then the eukarya domain is the domain that we belong into. So Linnaeus' system has changed over time as we have gathered more evidence. So classification is not this static system, it's very fluid, which means it's constantly changing, and as we learn more about the world that we live in, the system that we use to classify life has in fact changed. So we begin with the broadest category for all living things, and that's called the domain. We can then break the domains down into our six kingdoms. So the six kingdoms that we use include eubacteria, archaebacteria, fungus, protists, plants, and animals. And those kingdoms are something that we will focus on a later podcast. So kingdoms can be subdivided into smaller groups called phylum. Phylum can be broken down into classes. Classes can be broken down into order. Orders broken down into families. Families broken down into the genus, and then finally the individual specific name is derived from the species. So all living things can be categorized into this system of classification, going from very broad to very specific. So if we wanted to classify ourselves, we all belong in the eukarya domain. We are animals, so we are in the animal kingdom. The phylum that we belong to is based upon the fact that we have this backbone. So we are considered a chordate. And then if we broke down the chordates into the next class, we are in the class Mammalia. So again, that's a defining characteristic that all of us have. Mammals can be divided into the order Primate. The family we belong to is the Hominidae family. And then finally, genus Homo and species Sapien. Notice something about the capitalization and the lowercase species name. So when you see a genus name, it's always going to be capitalized, and the species name should always be written in lowercase. Very often in text, the Homo sapien would be in italic print as well. So Linnaeus' system was developed using kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, and since then we've added the domain level to that. So humans are classified as Homo sapiens as our scientific name. So I will expect that you know the order of classification, starting with the domain and then kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. That's something I expect you to know. It's probably something that you may have learned in a previous year of science. So maybe you have some silly way to help remember kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, like King Phil cuts onions for good soup is a very common mnemonic device to help you remember that. So here's just another flow chart that kind of shows the broad kingdom category with different types of animals. And if we were trying to classify just the grizzly bear, we can see the phylum that includes all animals with backbones. So this eliminates the sea star. And then we get to the mammals. So again, mammals have hair. They give birth to live young. They nurse their young. So that includes all of these. This reptile is eliminated from the class Mammalia. So if we get down to the order Carnivora, it basically eliminates the squirrel. The squirrel does not belong to this order. It belongs to the order Herbivora. Now we can break down the carnivores into the next family, which is the Ursidae. Ursidae are bears. So the fox is eliminated from the bear family. And then we can look at the panda bear, the black bear, the grizzly bear, and we can see that the genus between the black bear and the grizzly bear is the same. So they belong to the same genus, which tells us they're very closely related, more closely related than they are to the panda bear, and what's left over is the species Ursus arctos. Again, capitalized genus, lowercase species, and the scientific name for the grizzly bear is Ursus arctos. So here's a cladogram of the 6 kingdoms in our 3 domain systems. So one of the things that I just want you to be familiar with from this podcast is the fact that there are 3 domains: bacteria, archaea, and the domain eukarya. And if we look at each one of these individual arms on this cladogram, we can see these include all of the animals. This includes fungus. This green arm right here includes all the plants. The yellow includes the protist, and then you have your 2 separate domains for the archaea bacteria and the domain bacteria. These bacteria are ones we will spend more time on in class because there's still a lot of uncertainty about this group, and they're very difficult to study in a high school classroom. These ones are the ones that live on you and in you, and we can do a lot of work with in this class.